All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behavior Bites. I am so excited that you are here with us today. I am here again with Terrie Hayward. Last time we spoke about separation anxiety, and today we are talking about deaf dogs, or dogs who are hard of hearing, and the exciting new course that Terrie has out on just that. So if you missed the last episode, go back and check it out for sure. But Terrie is a certified professional animal trainer and the owner of PAW Positive Animal Wellness. She is the author of the Pocket Guide to Working with Deaf Dogs, titled A Deaf Dog Joins the Family, Training, Education, and Communication for a Smooth Transition, and the co-author of Grooming Without Stress, Safer, Quicker, Happier, as well as the book For Every Dog Family, Your 10-Minute-a-Day Dog. One of the things that I love about these books, just like the course as we'll talk about, is how approachable and digestible Terrie makes things. So go check out those books. Terrie specializes in working with deaf dogs and on canine separation anxiety cases, which is what we talked about last time. She works with families and their animal companions, presents workshops, travels, and consults focusing on positive reinforcement interactions and modifying behavior through applications in behavior analysis. Terrie holds a master's degree in education and is a Karen Pryor Academy certified training partner and faculty member, which means, right, that you teach trainers to be trainers, right? So she's also certified by the Council of Professional Dog Trainers and is a certified dog behavior consultant with the IAABC, as well as being a professional member of the Pet Professional Guild and a fear-free certified trainer. And we will have all of Terrie's info available in the description of the video so that you can reach out to her for more information. But I'm really, really excited, Terrie. Thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you for having me. And I noticed your IABC hat too.
Oh, yeah.
As you're good gear.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome, excellent. So last time you were here, we got to talk about separation anxiety, and today we're here talking about your other love, working with deaf dogs. So tell me why deaf dogs, what drew you to that specialty?
Yep, absolutely. So I had gotten a call from a friend who was in rescue, and she said, I have this big mouthy dog who has 12 puppies. Can you help me? And we initially didn't know Blanca was deaf, and I think I talk about it at some point, but I was clicking away and I had this pouch full of hot dogs, and of course she was responding to all of that versus anything that she could hear. And my background in special education, I think it just all sort of dovetailed nicely into, long story short, too, Blanca eventually became a permanent part of our family. My husband kept saying, how's that because we ended up fostering her, and he said, how's that looking for a permanent home for her going? And I was like, well, I just feel like she really needs to be adopted by like a positive reinforcement trainer. And he was like, oh, I see where that's going. Okay. I give up.
Might you have one in mind?
Where could we just find one of those? I don't know.
Who do we know? Beautiful.
But she also has taught me so many things, like when I've given presentations about working with deaf dogs, I'll say things like, I was a trainer before and I thought I knew the things, but, anytime we sort of step into a new realm, we go, oh, wow, look how much I don't know, and learn new things about, again, for like we were discussing a little bit before, non-auditory communication, which just really can be skills that are applicable to anybody looking to just kind of improve their repertoire of overall communication skills.
Absolutely. I love that. And I remember, so for those of you who haven't heard me geek out about this before, the first time that I met Terrie was at the IAABC conference in Houston back in 2019, and she autographed books for me. So I like fangirl every time, and I mention that story every time. And I watched your presentation on non-auditory communication, and I remember walking away from that with the same feeling that I had, the same ideas that I had walking away from your new course, which we're going to talk about in just a second, but if I can jump ahead. is that this is information for people who love deaf dogs, but it's also great information for people who love hearing dogs, because so much of the communication that we're doing with our dogs anyway is nonverbal. And so I love that. I absolutely just love that concept. Kind of the idea of, if your dog can't hear you, how would you interact with them? Just pretend, even if they can, just pretend for a minute that they can't. So that's beautiful. I love it. I love it. So tell us about this course that you have just launched.
Yeah, well, just like my book and any opportunity that I have to stand up and talk about non-auditory communication, deaf dogs, when I first adopted Blanca, I felt like there just wasn't a lot of information that was based from a trainer's perspective using positive reinforcement. So I was just looking to have more and more resources available so that more and more people could just understand a little better how to have this dog integrate better into their family and have overall a more smooth communication together, which of course just improves your bond and makes everybody's life happier and easier. Going back to when I used to teach human small people, I would say, like, I'm not teaching math or social studies. I'm teaching small members of society to live together, all of us. And, so with our animal companions, sort of the same. We would like them to have some nice skills and behaviors so that we can all get along and, have a happy household and community.
Yeah. I love that. Just reducing stress for everyone and improving quality of life.
Absolutely. Thank you for putting that in a nutshell. There you go.
Oh yeah, I love that concept. It's so beautiful. And something, I'm in your Facebook group, guys. Terrie has a great Facebook group. I'll have that link in there for people who love deaf dogs, and it's people all over the world, I believe, and it's a fairly large group. And something that I'll see folks, I lurk in there a lot. Something that I see folks ask a lot of the time is, how do I communicate X to my dogs who can't hear? And I think we get stuck, right, like in this kind of idea of, if my dog can't hear me, I don't have any way to communicate with them. When really, most of what our dogs are picking up on, even our hearing dogs, again, is non-auditory, right? They're watching our body language and our behaviors and putting together patterns. And so I think it's such a much needed resource. Like you said, you couldn't find a lot of that out there. And so I love this. And so even as I say, this course, and what I've seen of your books and your presentations and the Facebook group, all of the great resources you have, is that they're geared towards folks with deaf dogs. So there's not like this translation that needs to happen. Well, how does this work for my deaf dog? And at the same time, we see that a lot of this just applies in general in our behavior work or our communication with the animals that we live with, regardless of their ability to hear. And in fact, kind of, I think, opens up the understanding of how we communicate, because we move away from that narrow vision of how communication happens, which is
absolutely
fantastic.
Yep. So often, we're reliant upon verbal cues, but certainly there can be tactile cues and visual cues. And, not only for dogs that later in life might become deaf, are born congenitally without hearing versus those that have acquired deafness, but just in general, people all the time will do things like sit. And if you take away the verbal, oftentimes, like you said, the dog is responding to the visual cue. And just in general, out and about, if people would see me interacting with Blanca, they are like, well, how did she know how to do that? Because there was just to them, maybe even a subtle cue, because we can start with bigger, broader, and then approximate down to something smaller that just indicates the behavior that we're trying to communicate that we'd like. And then, of course, marking. Yes, exactly. And people often think too, wow, if you can do that without talking, well, surely we can do that with my dog who does hear. So it just kind of spreads the word about positive reinforcement, good training, and communication in general.
Absolutely. I love that. One of my kiddos is almost 12, and he's just recently lost some of his hearing. It was very helpful in your course to learn about the different kinds of deafness. Would that be an appropriate way to phrase that? So. Yep. so I won't try to repeat everything, and it will, but yes, it was very helpful, and to learn, like, just how to sort that out and to realize to the spectrum. And it's actually been, and people kind of make a face sometimes when I say this, but it's actually been kind of nice. Just in that he's not suffering, he's not stressed about it at all. No. I wouldn't be saying that if that was the case. He is, in fact, we've reduced some stress because when he has pain flares, there's an increase in noise sensitivity, and that has gone away. But it has really, I've had to be very intentional about rethinking the way he's experiencing the world. And have also pleasantly found that we have all of this nonverbal communication in place already, which has been very nice. Yeah. So something that even if someone doesn't love a deaf dog right now, it absolutely could happen with older age. And I think having some of these principles in place can get you ahead of the game. Yeah,
absolutely, for sure. Yes. And you said something else that I was just going to comment on, but it went out of my head. Sorry.
It comes back.
Yeah. For so many reasons, again, like you said, just being intentional and thinking about a sort of outside of the box ways that you can communicate, and not only having to rely on the verbal. And I think too, with folks that have deaf dogs, because the verbal communication is sort of the go-to, then they sort of think, oh, wow, how do I do this? And maybe, whereas if somebody's adopted a hearing dog, sometimes they're just like, well, it's just going to happen kind of naturally. So that piece is kind of nice. I remembered what I was going to say. You're talking about advantages, and yes, certainly. And sometimes dogs, if they lose hearing as they get older, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking based on their body language response to things. But there are certainly things that we can do: counter conditioning, desensitization, and building up some skills again. But thunderstorms, vacuum cleaners, fireworks, a hurricane. In our case, she slept through all of that, and I always said I would definitely adopt a deaf dog again. So
yeah. Oh, wonderful. One of my favorite things about the course is that Blanca appears regularly. So that's amazing, fantastic. So who would you say this course is for? We've kind of touched on that a little all over, but who's this course for?
Yeah, my primary objective was, again, to get the information out to sort of your everyday person. Of course, like you said, the obvious is people who have a deaf dog or are thinking about having a deaf dog during their family. But again, perhaps trainers who maybe the information, maybe there's a lot of information that they know, but even if I go to different presentations of someone, I might, for example, Dr. Susan Friedman, I might go to her presentation several times and just pick out different things each time, or different people might just say something a slightly different way that, like you and I were talking about earlier, you can incorporate or could be helpful in another scenario. And so, really anybody thinking about expanding their skill set to include some non-auditory, visual, tactile communication, if they're not already doing that, can be a valuable additional tool. So
yeah, I having run through it, have to agree, and I want to expand on that a little bit if it's okay. So I absolutely, and this is what I would say, I'll just kind of repeat what I said before we got talking, guys, before we hit record. And I was just saying how amazing the course is, and how absolutely I love how you've really made this super accessible, and given people kind of a place where they can go, and it's a really thorough course. So it's not, you go into, maybe I should let you talk about this.
No, please. You're doing a good job.
Right. I'll tell everyone about your course.
By all means.
Do you want to, before I go into what I loved about it so much, do you want to talk a little bit about the content and what people can find in the course?
It's as soon as you finish anything like a book or whatever, immediately you're like, oh, I should have included that too. Or so distilling down and kind of keeping things in a manageable order, because also putting things in order and then you think, oh, well, that goes there too. The goal was basically to have some information and then sort of have a practical piece. So the way that the course flows is that we give the information in sort of a PowerPoint stack format, and then there's this training piece where we show it in action, if you will. And a couple of times there's some videos of working with other people to demonstrate things where we needed to have something outdoors or at a distance. So that was sort of the premise of how it all would work.
Yeah, and it flowed so nicely. It just flowed so nicely. I really loved because so, you know, to kind of reiterate, it goes in and we get to learn about these concepts. I was just talking about how much I love you have this ability in your course, in your books, in your presentations of taking really what are really kind of complicated, complex scientific concepts and really distilling them down so they don't sound like that at all. They sound like these very easy steps. And I was joking because this is what we're supposed to do as trainers. I struggle to to do that, and I'm so impressed and a little bit jealous of that ability because it's beautiful. And so I learned so much as I'm going through this. And I'm a certified dog, what am I? Certified dog behavior consultant. I work with cases, but I learned a lot from the course. It was fantastic. I'll tell you guys a sneak peek. One of my favorite things I learned was Terrie has this great exercise for dogs who have a strong startle response, as deaf dogs and hearing dogs may have. And so I loved that. I also loved how it was like in there. I got a lot of dopamine hits, right? Because it was like, you completed a course. So there are a lot of different smaller sections. So nothing is too overwhelming. There are a lot of good stopping points to stop and kind of process. I think it's great for people of all learning styles because it's great. You go in and you give the concept and you give specifics and you give examples, and then there are video examples. And so you come away from it with this really whole beautiful, great understanding of the concept. And it goes so much deeper than I expected it to, because it's not just about the communication with deaf dogs, which is a big part of it and amazing, but it's also how do you do these everyday things, crate training, loose leash walking, how do you address unwanted behaviors in this way, and relevant for dogs who are hard of hearing or deaf, and also relevant for our hearing dogs. And so anyway, that's my glowing recommendation. Everyone go take this course. It just beautiful, fantastic. I loved it. And Blanca was such a great little model. She was so perfect. I also, this is totally off to the side, and then I'll go back to asking questions instead of rambling about how much I love the course. But one thing that I also really loved is, I think sometimes just as people and as trainers too, sometimes when we're kind of shining a spotlight on what we're doing, there can be a lot of pressure to have the dog like do the things right now. And one of the things that I love is not only does your training history with Blanca shine through, you guys are a beautiful team and have excellent communication, but you do something too that I really like and admire, and I try to do with my own dogs, and to say, oh yeah, my dog is doing something else right now at this exact moment, but rather than trying to like pull my dog's attention in and away from that thing, we just say, oh yeah, that's happening because, oh, I dropped a cookie over there, or oh, she's taking a little break, or oh, whatever it is. And then we just, and we get to see how much of a non-issue that is, right? Blanca just like comes back and she does the thing. And I just really love that aspect too, because I think it really kind of in a, not in a subtle way, but it's not the direct point, but we get to see this beautiful cooperation in how you work together, which is just gorgeous and shows throughout the entire course. It's beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
That reminded me, so I'm presenting at Clicker Expo this year, and one of the things that I was saying, we had a meeting today with all of my guests who are joining, and I said, don't worry that there's maybe 1,000 people, who knows, something like that behind the scenes, but you won't know, don't worry, just pretend they're not there, smile. But the good thing is, and the nice thing, this obviously the course was not live, which has its own benefits. You know, you can replay it, like you said, you can stop, you can review, it's self-paced. And of course, people could always reach out to me if they need some additional help afterwards. I do consults. But when you're doing live training, I always think it's okay, because some of those really great nuggets of learning and information are when something doesn't go exactly as planned, because in life it doesn't go according to script all the time, but it's important to see then how you work through it. So I think that's nice to show, because like you say, your dog isn't going to be a little robot, nor would we want them to. And so if it takes an extra moment, or like when we were doing the crate training video, she just sometimes, or the stationing, settle on a mat, I think it was, you know, occasionally would be doing something and then I'd be like, oh, look at that, that was just what I planned, but I was surprised that she did it in that moment, or something like that, because she was, like you said, the chicken was over there and she was busy scrounging after the chicken, but then came back around. So it was all good.
Yeah. And that concept of like waiting for the dog to opt in to what you're doing.
Absolutely.
It showed through and through. It was just fantastic, gorgeous. I also love, there was the reverse of that, right? I can't remember the name of the little white dog in the counter surfing, but like he didn't do the behavior. Like we're just gonna assume he does. He does it.
Yeah. Yes.
That was a nice surprise.
Yes. Well, occasionally things like that would happen. And I would say to my co-producer, I would say, but that's okay, because we can still explain what would happen if they did. And you know, at the end of the day, like a loose leash walking scenario, if a dog's not pulling, that's okay too, because we honestly don't want to put a dog into a position where they would practice unwanted behavior. If we captured it in the process of, you know, doing this video, okay, but we're not gonna, you know, we can explain it without having to see it per se. So
yes, I think that's a hard concept for sometimes for people to grasp too. So I love, they're all like these little nuggets all throughout the course that are like not explicit, but they're a big deal. It's gorgeous. It's fantastic, guys. Go get the course, and all of that information will be there. So Terrie, if you had like one, and maybe you have something that you regularly say, you're working with someone who has a deaf dog, or someone approaches you and has a question, if there was like one main thing that you would want people to kind of know upfront or focus on, what would that be?
You touched upon this earlier, and I think it's a good point. You said when your dog was losing his hearing, that, you know, he didn't feel bad or anything because he was fine. I think a couple of common emotions, which you might have remembered, I might have said this in my presentation at IBC, but that people tend to feel is sorry for the dog, and then really panicked about how on earth will I be able to have this nice, normal, quote, normal relationship with this animal. And, you know, and if the dog has lost their hearing, again, that sometimes can be a little bit different. If there are anxieties about this, we can work through that. But if a dog is born deaf, they don't know any different, and we don't have to feel sorry. They can do everything that a dog that has hearing can do, except that if they're not looking at you, I put that in quotes because there are ways that we can, like in the course I explained, like double tug, which is not pulling on the leash, but using that double tug as communication to get your dog to orient, to invite them to orient back to you. So, you know, that we don't have to, of course, feel panic either. I think it's just more the human learning to think a little bit differently, which is another good skill for all of us to have, because you know, as we go along, sometimes we get into a rhythm and occasionally we're thrown off track or on purpose step out of the boundaries. But either way, that's where some new learning happens, and it's always good to continue to grow and learn and experience new things.
Yes. I loved your point earlier on, when you, oh God, did it just fly out of my head? Hold on. It was, oh gosh, you were talking about, well, okay, hold on. Let me follow my train of thought backwards. So what you just made me think of how, when I was first learning to become a trainer, like interning and that sort of thing, I was helping out with a class, and I was like kind of running the class, but like with help, you know, that sort of thing. And they were like, oh yeah, like the first class, like handing me the clipboard, we're ready to go. Oh yeah, there's a deaf dog in the class. And I remember just being like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that at all. And to think about it now, right, I'm like, oh, it's just the same thing. We're just making a few little tweaks, which is what they told me, but it didn't feel like that at the time.
Right.
So I can certainly see, you know, I can empathize with that idea of this is going to be so much harder, or what are we going to do? How are we going to communicate? And I had a thought that was connected to that, and now it's gone about something wonderful that you had said earlier on. But yes, I think that's such a great message to say we don't have to be. Feelings are valid. Feel your feelings, absolutely. But it's not the end of the world or the end of their quality of life or the end of your relationship with them at all. And in fact, can be a building block, I think, to a greater understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you can have fun secret conversations, because you're doing these visual or tactile cues that other people are not aware of. So absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know why it always reminds me of that story about, gosh, what's the name? There's that horse, the counting horse, and
Clever Hans.
Yes. I don't know why it always reminds me of that. Like it's like a magic trick that no one can figure out. And and yes, very cool. Very cool. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I was doing the course with Steve at NEI that Susan also does a couple years ago. Well, many, I guess now. But as a special thing during one of the breaks, they had brought in one of the birds that does a whole show, and with the bird, they go, and you didn't like that, right? And you didn't like that, right? And the bird's like, no, but of course, all as trainers, we were picking up all of these nonverbal cues. Some of them were verbal, but many were context, nonverbal, body language, etc. And so, again, this is the same type of thing, but just thinking about it specifically related to perhaps an animal that can't hear. So, yeah.
Such amazing information. I am so excited. I really, really recommend to anyone who I don't think that this is something that if you are looking to get just an idea of kind of where to start with some training, if you have a new dog, if you're new to positive reinforcement, if you have a deaf dog, obviously, but if you work with Dogdoll, if you work at a shelter, if you work at a daycare, if you work in a vet's office, you're going to at some point encounter a deaf dog or a hard of hearing dog. And certainly your own dog could lose their hearing at some point due to old age or other reasons. And so I don't think, even if you don't know a single deaf dog in your entire world right now, I think this course is beneficial for everyone. I, as a trainer and behavior consultant, learned awesome new things. I'm probably going to rewatch some of the pieces about deafness specifically and like the kind of physiology of that because it was really cool. And so I just glowing recommendation. Again, if you're watching this, you should go watch that. And so fantastic. Terrie, is there anything else that you want to touch on before we tell folks where they can find you? You've got some exciting stuff coming up in the future too.
Yeah, well, again, I was telling her before we started that it was a long time in the making, and a couple of things just caused bumps in the road to get it out. So I'm just happy finally that it's out there. And I just hope that a lot of people will benefit from the information. And again, just think about things maybe with a new twist and give them some new ideas. Again, sometimes we read a passage or we learn something and it doesn't directly relate to something else, but later on it just sparks, a new way of considering an approach, and that's always good. So, yeah.
Yes, I love that. I guys, earlier today, I was just telling Terrie, I took some wording that Terrie used in this course and I applied it to one of my cases today. And it's always so helpful to learn from each other, even if you are going into this and saying, oh, I've worked with deaf dogs before, I'm familiar with positive reinforcement training. I still think it's just so well laid out, Terrie. It's just so well laid out and so easy to digest while still sharing so much information. It's very impressive. It's very, very impressive. So,
well, I so appreciate your feedback and the fact that you enjoyed it. So thank you so much for sharing and for taking the course. And I hope that others will find it as informational and helpful too.
I'm sure. I can't wait to see your Facebook page kind of over the next few weeks as people take it and complete it and that sort of thing. And or months. I'm not sure what the normal time was to finish it. I binge watched it and I loved how accessible it was because it had captions and I could adjust the audio speed and I processed best at 2 times the speed. So I kind of that's probably not how most people will do it, but,
but to each their own. And
right.
And we did, like you said, have the captions, of course. I mean, now it's very important because we realize, but also in case people are deaf too, because sometimes
Exactly. Yeah.
people who are deaf adopt deaf dogs, of course.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that accessibility. Beautiful. All right, Terrie, so where can folks find you? We'll have all of your links, of course, in the description. You've got Clicker Expo coming up. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you have going on?
Yeah, I'm speaking on 2 topics this year at Clicker Expo. The first is separation anxiety again, but we're doing a little bit more of a deep dive, if you will. And then the second one is body language. And I have some fun other species guests joining us, which I know. I was telling the folks, because like you were saying about the training, and they're like, well, what if my kind of animal does this or that? And I said, nobody's going to care. They're just going to be like, look at the animal. I love the animal. You know, that's what we do. So I said, your animals are there just to be the stars. It really doesn't make it. And nothing's set in stone, like it has to happen exactly like this. And like we were saying, some of the best learning or training moments can occur when, because if people are watching too, we don't want them to go away feeling like, oh, my sessions don't look always like 100% perfect because I haven't done 100 takes, like not realizing you did that, maybe could do that behind the scenes.
Right.
So yeah, so body language and separation anxiety are the 2 topics I'll be chatting on. And I do have I forget what they call it. It's not open mic. That's definitely the wrong thing, but it's like a bonus session. And Lara Benadanak-Ba, I hope I got that right. And I are paired up to chat in that session. So hopefully some folks will join us for that too. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait. I can't wait. Richmond folks, Clicker Expo this year is in person in DC. And so you should probably take advantage of that. I will be there. I could see you there. It would be awesome. And then Terrie, you're presenting at the virtual portion this year, right? And so it's 2 events. There's the virtual is at the end of January, I believe, and then the in-person is at the end of March. And you can still get tickets, and you can sign up for, I think if you sign up for the in-person, you get a really nice discount on the virtual, or you can just sign up for the virtual. It's all going to be amazing. It's different content. And so, yes, everyone should go see Terrie's presentations and the presentations of so many amazing people. I just can't. I'm just so excited. All right, excellent, good. Terrie, thank you so much for coming today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time again, and your very nice comments about the course that's just come out.
Pretty amazing course. So fantastic. Yes, yes, yes. All right, excellent. All right, everyone, be sure to check out where you can find Terrie. The Facebook group is fantastic. The course is fantastic. Come to Clicker Expo. And thank you for being here. I'll see you all again soon. Bye.
Thank you.